Hello all, welcome to another quick learning. Today we're going back to CodeSignal to work on the database SQL coding exercises. If you're joining this in the playlist, I'll put a link in the description below so you can start from the beginning if you wish. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So I'm going to the arcade. Going to databases. So we're on the very last one here on table of desserts, number 84, tic-tac-toe tournament. So the latest tic-tac-toe world championship has just concluded. It was a big success and attracted a lot of participants. Now everybody is waiting for the results. As a member of the judging committee, you've been tasked with creating a championship leaderboard. The results of all the tic-tac-toe matches are stored in the results table, which has the following structure. So there's a timestamp, game knots. So this is the name of the player that was using the zero or knots, whatever you want to call that. Name crosses, the name of the person that played with the crosses, or X. Board, the state of the tic-tac-toe board at the end of the game in the format described below. So the board is a string of 9 characters that represent the state of board's 9 cells at the end of the match. The first 3 characters represent the first upper row, the second 3 characters represent the second row, etc. And the character 0 is a respective board cell containing a knot. X is if it contained a cross or dot or period if the cell was empty at the end of the game. So they put in these pipe characters, but how it would look here is, so you can see there's empties, so they put in the periods, and then there's a knot or a 0, and then a period because it's empty, and then a knot, and then a period. Then for the last row, there's 3 X's, and so that's 3 X's there, or crosses as I like to call them. It is guaranteed that the imposing players have different names. It's also guaranteed that each board represents a valid terminal state for a tic-tac-toe game, meaning that either the player wins or it's a draw. Players are awarded points based on their performance. They get 2 points for each game they win, 1 point for a draw, and 0 points if they lose. Create a leaderboard with the following format. Given the results table, compose a results table that has the following 6 columns: name, points, played, won, draw, and lost, containing the players' names, their points calculated as described above, the number of games they have played, the number of games they have won, and the number of games they have lost, respectively. The table should be sorted in descending order by the points, then in ascending order by the total number of played games, then in descending order by the number of victories, and then in ascending order by player's name. All right. So the sort condition is here. So you can see points is the sum of p, so that's descending. Games played is played, and then won descending, and then name. So that's how we sort that. So the following table is what the results look like. So you got time and date. You got who played the knots, who played the crosses, and the final board state. So in this case, it looks like the X's won because they're getting the horizontal in the first row, second row, and third row, or sorry, vertical. And then, so that's the results. And then you have to tabulate, the players, how many points they had, played, won, drawn, and lost. Okay, so how would we do this? So let's go ahead and look at this. We're going to first look at this subquery here. So it does something simple. It just takes from the results table. First, we're going to do the name knots, and just put name because they want just name here. And then we're going to use this p function to calculate the number of points that they got for that. So we'll go through that in a second. That's from the results. And then we union all, since we need both the names of and results of people that played game knots and game crosses. We union all that with a select query that has the name of the crosses and calculate how many points they got with the crosses and add that to that. So if you're not familiar with union all, basically all it does is it takes the results of this select query and then it appends the results of this select query at the end of it. If you use just union, it will take out any duplicates that it finds between the two. We don't want to do union here because the games between noughts and crosses are distinct, and so we want to make sure that both of those are included. All right, so you'll see that it calls this function P, and it calls it with the end board state. So board is, so from the results table, you'll see that board is the end state of the board, so that's how it ended up. And then it has this identifier here, 0 or 1. 0 indicates that the person was playing noughts, and 1 indicates that they were playing crosses, and that's used to calculate how many points that they scored. All right, so let's go into this function, which is the main thing here that you have to understand. So we create a function P, and it accepts 2 arguments. So S, which is a character which is 9 in length, that's the end state board. And then X, which is an integer, which is either 0 or 1, 0 if you played noughts, and 1 if that person played crosses. And we're going to return an integer, which is the points that that person scored. So it's going to return, and then we have an if statement. So the if statement looks at who actually won the game based on the board results, and it's using one of these regex functions that using the rlink. So to understand this, so this caret character says that this is the start of the string that we're putting in. And then we have these parentheses, and don't confuse these periods with the periods in the board. The period in the regex statement means it can be any character of 1 length. And so there's going to be 3 of those, and the star means that you can have any number of combinations of 3 characters. So it could be 0, 1, 2, 3, etc. Combinations of 3 characters. And then you're going to have, if you have 3 O's, that means that this person is going to win horizontally. So you're going to have, so this is going to be any number of 3 characters, and then 3 in a row of these O or noughts is a win. And then you could have any number of 3 character lengths, again, with this same parentheses, dots, and star. And then this $sign says this is the end of the string. All right, so this is how you would calculate if there was a horizontal row win for the noughts. In a vertical row win, it would look like this. So there'd be an O, and then 2 dots, and then an O, and then 2 dots, and then, so any 2 characters is the dots, and then any 2 characters, and then an O. So this would work for either in the first column, second column, or third column. And there could be any number of characters before and after this. So like if it was in the second column, you'd have a dot, and then O, and then dot, dot, O, dot, dot, O. So there's always 2 characters between them. All right, and if it's a diagonal win, then it's going to be this sort of setup where you've got the nought and then 3 characters there. Doesn't matter what the characters are. Then another nought and then 3 characters. Doesn't matter what the characters are, and then a nought. And then the other diagonal is this way. So if you're doing the diagonal this way, you get this result. And if you're doing the diagonal this way, you get this result. And so if this is a not win, and the person is not, then you put 0, and then 2 minus 0 times 0 is 2. So you do this first because of order of operations. So 0 times 2 is 0. So 2 minus 0 is 2. You get 2 points for a win. This is a win for not. Now, if it doesn't meet any of these conditions, then it will look up whether it won for X. And it basically does the same thing, except you substitute the noughts for X's. And if it won for X, then you're going to get 0 times 2, which is 0. So the not player would get 0. Now, if you would have put 1 in this argument, that means that you're using it's an a cross player, and in this case 1 times 2 is 2, so 2 minus 2 is 0. So if the not player won, it's going to give it 0 points for x. And in here, if the cross player won and here's a 1, then it would give you 2 points for the crosses player. And if it doesn't meet either one of these conditions, that means it's a draw, and so the player will get 1 point. So that's how it calculates the points. And then we just have this query on top of this query that's going to sum up those points that you calculated. And then it'll count up the number of rows that are in this resulting union, and that's the number of games that are played. And then it'll sum up the number of times that P equals 2 in a game, and that's the number of times that that player has won. When P equals 1, that's the number of games that they've drawn. When P equals 0, that's the number of games that they've lost. All right. So you do that. You need the group by of name because these are a bunch of different aggregate functions. So you do that. If we run that query, you'll see that that query works. So hopefully you can follow along with that, and you'll join me for future videos. And congratulations if you made it all the way through all of these CodeSignal Database SQL exercises with me. And if you did, go ahead and put in the comments. And good job. Thank you very much.